Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on TCEQ's new lead service line inventory portal using the GEC Swift Submittals application. So my name is Laura Higgins. I'm the section manager for the Drinking Water Standards section that's part of the Water Supply Division here at TCEQ. Ever since the lead and copper rule revisions were first published back in December of 2021, TCEQ has been working with water systems to understand the requirements for the initial service line inventory that's due October 16th of this year. I know we've all got that date circled on our calendars, but it's coming up quick. So I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but Texas is a big state. Beyond interpreting and providing guidance on the requirements for the new rule, finding unique solutions that meet all the circumstances of every single water system within the state has been a real challenge. So after a series of presentations, workshops, and stakeholder meetings, TCEQ published an Excel template, which we call TCEQ Form 20943, back in November of 2022, in order to help water systems begin work on their service line inventories. However, now sitting here in August of 2024, we realize that form isn't perfect. It was a place to start. So now it makes me very happy to be able to announce that there is now another option for submitting your initial service line inventory, and that is through this lead service line inventory portal from GEC Swift Submittals. We've been calling it the lead service line inventory portal. Affectionately, we've also called it Leslie, LSLI. So if you hear both terms, know that that's what we're referring to today. This portal is going to be a great alternative, as we know some folks have had issues using the Excel template form as it currently stands. So some of the benefits of using this new portal are, one, that it's an app and it's mobile friendly. So the service line updates can be performed in the field when service line repairs or replacements are being performed. And it can be a repository for all of your lead service line inventory data. So it's secure, it's accessible, it's backed up, it's easy to update. There you can see the history of service line updates and submittals to the state. There's also extra features, metrics, diagrams, and charts that are built into the application that are there to help meet any related regulatory requirements that are needed. There's also no need to maintain data in the spreadsheet anymore. You can all just use the portal, which I think should be a great feature for folks going forward. One of the other big benefits is that we have made this fairly easy to transition from our current Excel template into the portal, so that it's hopefully just a copy and paste. If you've been using the Excel version, hopefully transitioning to the portal should be very simple, and that's what we're here to learn about today. Some of the other features of the portal are that, unlike emailing the Excel template, now using the portal, you can have a record of submitting your inventory to the state by October 16th of 2024. And with that, you get certified submission, including who did the submission and when. And you can also view the state processing status to confirm that TCEQ has accepted the submission. You'll also be able to see metrics and history to show when the water systems submitted their inventory initially and going forward in subsequent years. So today we have a great webinar lined up. We're going to go over how to use the app for submittals, or submitting your service line inventory, transferring data to the submittals template, and how to register in the portal. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, and we'll get right on in.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So before I jump into the app, I just wanted to do a bit of quick housekeeping here. We will save time at the end for questions, but as I'm going along doing this training, feel free to use that questions pane in the GoToWebinar panel. You can submit questions there in the chat, and then we can have folks try to answer it as we go, or again, we'll get to it at the end. We do have a lot of information we're covering today, but we are recording this session and we'll make it available to everyone. And then the last thing I do just want to mention is that when I'm showing you guys this training, it will be in a test environment. So it might be a little slower than what we'd see live in production. And also I want to mention that I'm not using real data. So I'm sorry if I'm using one of your systems for my fake data, but everything you guys see is just totally test data. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I wanted to show you was just kind of an overview of how the app works, just real high level. You'll see it kind of correlates to what Laura was describing. So up at the beginning here, you guys have been gathering your LSLI data. And again, LSLI is also known as Leslie, so you'll hear it both ways. But what you're doing here is you're gathering that data for your lead service lines. And this submittals application can be your repository for all the things related to those service lines. So you'll see that you can actually attach pictures and records to the individual service lines. You can submit the LSLIs and other files required for the lead and copper rule revisions and improvements. And you can maintain all this data straight in the app. Like Laura mentioned, it's mobile friendly. Those updates can be done in the field when you're out there with repairs or replacements or other things. So once you've gathered all this data, now it's time to get it into the submittals application. So to add the LSLI data to the submittals app, you can do that in two ways, which we'll go over each of these ways, but you'll be able to do it in the spreadsheet template or also using a web form. So when you are submitting the data, validations are going to run before you can save the data into your inventory. So that's just going to be things like making sure all the required fields are filled in, that you're using the drop-down values specific to the Texas template, and so on. So after those validations are run, then you would be able to import it into your inventory and it will be saved in the database. Once you have all your data ready, then you'll be doing the next step of submitting the LSLI to the state. So you will certify your official submission to the state. You'll be able to see who and when these submittals were, when they were submitted, when they were processed by the state, whether they were approved or not. You'll be able to see all of those things in the submittal history. And then also you'll be able to track things like your service line replacements, your unknowns, and other information to make sure that you're staying in compliance with those lead and copper regulations. And those would all be shown on the homepage, metrics and reports. Okay, so that's just the really high level overview. Now let's go ahead and get into the training. Okay, so this is what the submittal app looks like when you've logged in. Let's just kind of go over the lay of the land first here. So we have landed on the homepage. And this is where those metrics and graphics are located, and we'll circle back to those at the end. Want to bring your attention over here on the left. This is the menu. Now for water systems, your menu is going to have the home page at the top, and then the submit section, and then on down to the history. So that is where your menu will end. You're not going to see all this extra stuff that I have. Only the state users are using that state review queue, and only they are going to see that, and only administrators are going to see this part of the menu. So your menu is going to be a little bit cleaned up from this, but you will see from the home page on down to the history. When you're ready to add your data to submittals, you'll be working in the submit section under this lead service lines and then update service lines. So that will be where you start. So now your water systems will be signing up for the Submittals app, and you will be assigned to the water system or water systems for which you can submit LSLI data. So if you happen to be an operator for more than one, for example, you might have multiple systems. Whenever you log into the app and you are on these pages, it will always show you which water system you're working with. So if you only have one, it's automatically going to be your one system. But if you have more than one, then you can switch between them using this field. So I'll show you this little arrow is a drop-down arrow. It gives you the list of systems that you have assigned. You can choose from the list, or you can start typing if you know the PWS ID number or the name of your water system. If you start typing, the list will kind of whittle down to that field, that name. Okay, so I'm going to be working with the City of Wells. You will see this water system field at the top of all the pages too, so you'll always know which water system you're working with. Okay, so as you build your lead service line inventory, you've gathered all your service line data, and you can maintain it in your own system or on that Texas spreadsheet, but it's really built that you can be maintaining it in this app. So some water systems may not have a separate repository for the data, and so it's designed that you can use this as actually your database of record. If you already have data on that Texas template, this app corresponds to that template. The Texas original form does have just a few extra rows and columns, so you'll want to get rid of those and just copy over the actual service line data to this app version of the template. And I will get into that when we talk about the batch uploads. So this app, you'll have the ability to download the template, put your data into it, and then upload it into the app. So that would be the spreadsheet way of updating data, but you can also update the service lines individually, one service line at a time, using either by adding a new service line if it's not already part of your inventory, or updating an existing service line that you have already added previously. All of the data that you add, either with the web form one by one or using those batch uploads, they will all appear here in your inventory once they have been uploaded and imported. So this is where you can view your full inventory. One of the other things you can do with your inventory then is request a full inventory export. So this would include all those template fields, maybe any additional calculated fields from the app, like the official lead category for the service line. If you click on that Request Full Inventory Export button, it's going to let you know that it's going to send you an email of that export. This email is based on what you've used to sign up in the portal, so it'll tell you which email that is. And then when it emails it to you, it would have all your service lines that you have here in the inventory in one file for you. So I'm not going to hit export at this moment, though. I'll just hit cancel. Okay, so we mentioned that there's the two ways to add the service lines. I'm going to hold off on the batch uploads just for a second. We're going to start with adding just a single service line. It's a little bit simpler process, and it's something that you might use down the road just to edit a service line here and there. So what is used for these single service lines is called a web form. If you click Add New Service Line, it would be an empty web form. Or if you click Edit, it's going to have all the service line data already pre-filled that you have included previously. This is mobile responsive for your phones and tablets. So let's pretend like we're in that scenario where we have a worker in the field wanting to quickly update the service lines. And to do that, they might want to search for where they're at. So in this middle section of this page is a search. You can have it open all the time, or you can collapse it like I had it. If we wanted to search for an existing service line, let's say I'm on Homer Road here, and I want to find all my service lines from that road, narrow it down. You can see I have two. So let's say that 175 Homer Road is the one that I'd like to update. I'm going to go to this action section for that service line and click Edit. So here is the web form. This is going to be the same data fields that you would see in the template, that spreadsheet. So they correspond with each other. Up at the top here, we have some instructions. And I want to bring your attention to this piece right here. All the fields that are required are going to have that star or asterisk next to them. So if you have any fields with the star, you need to make sure that those are filled in. So let me just show you an example here. Under the system owned section, we have that system owned portion of the service line material classification. So you can see there's that little red star there. If we were to leave this field blank, I'll just clear it out for a second, you can see that that field turns red and there's a message below it letting you know this field is required. So what you would do is fill it back in, choose your material, and then the error goes away. And so if I were to leave it blank, I'm not going to be able to save it. If I click save, it's going to let me know you have to correct the fields to be able to save. So it's going to make sure that you do fill in those required fields. Something else to mention on this web form is you see this little arrow again. That's the drop-down list for you with all the permitted values for this field. If you start typing in this field, like I'll type gal, then it's going to go ahead and shrink that list down for me to limit it to just any of the options that have GAL in them. So it's an easier way to filter this list down, and then you can make your selection. You may also, when it comes to required fields, some of these fields might end up being conditionally required. So especially when we're trying to determine if the galvanized lines need to be replaced, sometimes there's some additional data fields that are required for that situation. So if that were the case, then it would give you a message and let you know that this field is required based on the data you've entered, and it would just highlight that for you so you would know. And then the last thing I just kind of want to show you about these fields here is this little info icon. So if you hover on this, it will give you just a little bit of additional information and explanation about this field. So you would be able to see that what is expected for that field. This help info is going to correspond to that Excel template as well, where if you click on a column, it will give you a similar explanation for the data fields. So, and then I guess the last thing to note on this form is that it is divided into sections. And these sections also correspond with kind of those header groupings on that spreadsheet form. Okay, so let's go into a little more detail on these different sections. Up at the top, we start with some locational information. This map service area is just going to have the pin for the latitude and longitude. So we do have a geocoding tool connected to this app. If you have an address and you don't have the latitude and longitude, it's going to find it for you and place a pin there. If you are looking at this pin and you think that, okay, that's not exactly right, I would like to move it, you just click in a new spot and it is moved. If you click too far, like maybe to this house over here, it's going to say, okay, maybe you meant to pick this for the address, and it'll give you this prompt. You do not have to use this suggested address. It's just trying to be helpful. So if you want to just keep the address that you had typed and keep the pin exactly where you put it, you would just click keep the pin in the current address. If you like the suggestion and you think it's right, then you can replace your address with the one it's suggesting. So you have some options there. The address and the pins, those are independent. It's just a way to visually show the latitude and longitude that is being stored for that service line. The locational information below this section, this will be familiar to you. This is what you would be seeing on that template. And then we did show you this system-owned portion. There's also a customer-owned portion with very similar fields for you to fill out. This entire service line section, you have a field on that template where you can enter in the total service line material classification, and that's something that you can select and upload. However, the app is also going to calculate it. So based on all the data that you filled in on all these sections, once you click save, it's going to calculate what this category is. And this is going to be the official lead service line category that is assigned to this service line. So this is not something that you'd be able to edit, but it's something that you'd be able to see what the app has calculated for this service line based on your data. Okay, if you, let's see, what else? Maybe other potential sources of lead. This could be something where, as I'm in the field, I've now been able to confirm that there is lead solder. So I previously didn't have this filled in, but now I can go ahead and click yes for that. And this additional information for tap monitoring tiering. This is something that down the road, we might have the app calculate the site sampling tiers for you based on the data. That's another piece of the rule that's not quite final. So it may not be useful just yet, but that is coming down the pipe. So because of that, you're going to want to fill in as much as you can here so that it will help you to do your sampling planning. So let's go ahead and say that, yes, this is a single family residence, and any other information you have to go along with this, you'll want to fill in. The lead service line replacement section, this section is really only going to be used if you have service lines that do need to be replaced. And then once you start replacing them, you'll want to log it into these two fields when you have replaced both sides of the service line. This attach files section appears after you have saved the service line. You can start adding files to it. To add files, you can click on this add file button. You can drag and drop your file if you have it, or you can select the file, and I'm just using the example I already have in there. When you attach the file, you can say exactly what it is. I mentioned here service line. I can type it again. This is the service line. Maybe this is the tap card, we can say, whatever it might be that you're uploading. Then when you have this service line, you can see all the files attached to it, and there's a little description about which each of these files are. You can remove them if you don't want them tied to that service line, and you can download them later as well. So if we click Save, oh, one thing before I leave this page related to the map, the very first time you log in, it might ask you if you would like to allow it to use your location. If you click yes, that's just going to center the map on Texas versus the middle of the country. So if you would like that to be the case when you're adding a brand new service line, if you'd like the map to be centered on your location, then you can say yes to allow the app to do that, but you don't have to, that's optional. Okay, let's click Save. And so now it's letting me know, okay, you have new data, I'm recalculating it, and now I've determined that this is a lead service line. If you go back to the inventory, then we have all of our service lines here. Now, whenever you're making changes to these service lines and updates over time, you can always view the latest changes in this Actions column by clicking View Changes. It's going to let you know which values have changed and when. So previously we had unknown for the two halves of the service line, and the final category was unknown, but now we've been updating them, and now we have identified that they are lead. And so you can see those two categories went from unknown to lead, and that the calculated category went from unknown to lead as well. You can also download these change reports if you'd like, if you need to save a record for any reason. You'll see these change reports available in other places in the app as well. One other thing to note with this inventory screen right here is that in this Actions column, you see that you can remove a service line. So when you click Remove, it will give you a warning message to make sure that, are you sure you really want to remove it? So you're not going to be able to get it back. If you remove it, it's gone forever. It's permanently deleted. If you have like a service line that is just vacant, for example, then you're not going to want to remove the service line from your inventory. This would be used more if you have added it by mistake, or you put the same one in twice, or something of that nature. So you might have a need to remove a service line. If that was the case, you would confirm the removal, and then it would be gone. I'm going to cancel out of there. Okay, so really we fully covered the web form side of adding service line information, updating service lines, adding new ones. So now let's get over here to the batch uploads piece. This is something that you can add new service lines or update existing service lines in one large batch upload. This is probably one of the most common methods here, especially at the beginning when you're adding your initial inventory. It's often, we're finding folks like to upload that Excel template and get it imported into the LSLI database. Okay, so this page is the batch uploads page. It's going to keep a record of all the uploads that have happened for this water system or in wells. You are able to view past uploads, and you can view all the data for that service line that was in the upload. Let me click on view. I'll give you a quick example here. Let me maybe try to remember what had a good one, maybe this one. So you can see on view, we had 2 records in this upload. That was all, and we could see the changes that occurred for the service lines for each of those records. You can also view the full details on that service line if you would like to, or if you just want to see what changed, you can click on that. Let me return to the uploads page. The other thing you can do on any of these files is download the file that was uploaded. So whatever that original file was that you chose to upload, you can always download a fresh copy and see what exactly you had used in that upload. Okay, so we're going to advise that you really want to always download a fresh template whenever possible from the app, and that's this button right here. As the rule changes or down the road, if Texas makes any updates to their template, this app will always have the most up-to-date template available for you. So if you save one on your computer and changes have happened, then it may not work. So we do recommend, if you can, download the template fresh. Then you're going to put in all of your service line data. And then you're going to upload that data from Excel, from that file that you have filled in. When you click on this upload button, again, you are able to drag and drop it if you have two screens or another window, or you can select the file from wherever you have it on your computer and click open. If this is not the correct file, you can always X out and pick a different one, but this is the file I'd like to use for today, so I'm going to click Upload File. Okay, so at this phase in Submittals, the app is validating that uploaded data, and it's checking for completeness. So it's making sure that you have those required fields, and it's checking formatting, like if it's a date field, is it in a date format, and that kind of thing. Now, usually this piece of processing takes just a few seconds, but we do have a ton of systems entering a lot of data. So if you have another user that's uploaded 1 million rows, it could take, say, 30 minutes to process that one. And then it would have to move on to yours. So for this reason, since it's not, you don't know for sure when it will be ready, we do go ahead and have the app send you an email letting you know when processing is complete. So it starts out in queue, kind of in line. I'm going to click refresh and see if it's ready. Then it will eventually say validating once it's, yep, and now it's ready for review. Let me just show you the email real quick so you have an idea for what it would look like. You just get an email like this that lets you know the water system and that your file upload has finished processing. So that's what we're looking at there. This upload status, we're now at the phase that we have uploaded it and we're ready for review. So even though this file has been uploaded, I just want to clarify, it is not part of your inventory yet. So this is just kind of your workspace when you're uploading the batches. So at this point, it is uploaded, but is not part of your inventory yet. We will get to that in just a second. So when I clicked on, let me go back in case I went too fast. In the Actions pane here, I click on Review. And here is where I'm going to review the service lines that have new data in the upload. So if you have uploaded all of your service lines in this file, let's say you had 100, but 94 stayed exactly the same as what's already been imported into your database, then here you're only going to see those 6 service lines that had new or different data. So we're just going to, you can view the changes for each of the service lines if you want to see what the old data was, and based on your upload, what the new data would be. But what's going to happen for all of these service lines is you will see a status of valid or invalid. So if they're valid, then you're good to go. Those service lines are ready to be imported into your lead service line inventory. As far as valid, you may also see one other valid status that says valid and then dash address uncertain. So it's still valid, you can still proceed on, but it just means that when that latitude and longitude, if it was not provided, that geocoding tool, that mapping tool, it found more than one similar address to what you had entered. So if it doesn't find a singular exact match, then it has some uncertainty, and it would just like someone to confirm that it placed the pin correctly. So that's something you can do at a later date, though. You don't have to do it at this phase. It's up to you if you want to look at that and confirm the PIN. If you wanted to do that, you would just go into edit. But the only ones you have to do at this phase are these ones that are marked as invalid. So you can't proceed with your import until you have these two invalid ones either removed or corrected. So if you decided that, you know, this service line has tons of missing data, I wasn't really ready to include it after all, you can just click delete, and that service line is going to be removed from this upload. So that's one option, and you would have to later on add it to your inventory in a different upload. Or you can go ahead and right here, edit and fix those errors. So let's go ahead and do that. If I click edit, it's going to look just like that web form, has all the data filled in, but then the section that has errors is going to be bolded and have that exclamation point. So if I click on that section, I can see, okay, this field is the field that's the problem. It was a required field and it was left blank. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. We'll say that it's lead, and I'll click save. Now I can return back to my upload review page, and I can see that now it has changed to valid. So now I have one left to correct. Let's go ahead and look at that one. Click on edit, go to the section that is identified, and then I can see here, so here it's telling me exactly what the value was in Excel, and it's letting me know that that value that I typed in somehow, it was not one of the permitted values, so it was not in the drop-down list. So we can see my only choices for this field are yes, no, and don't know. So I don't know is not acceptable, so I'm going to pick the correct one from the list and then clear out that error. So now I'm ready to save. Go back, and now I can see all of the records in this upload are valid, so now I have the ability to import these service lines into my inventory. And you are importing the information. If you already have that service line there, it's just going to import the new information and update that service line. Before I do that, I will mention this button right here, this discard upload. Maybe early on here, you might realize that, oh, okay, I had 100 service lines and I left the city blank on all of them, and that was a required field. So you don't want to correct them one by one here. You would rather go back to the spreadsheet, fill it in there, and then upload new. So if you don't want to proceed with this upload at all, if you just kind of want to discard it, you're not going to go back and try to do anything with it later, you can click discard, and this whole upload will be discarded. But for now, we're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and import. I'll show you what happens there. It's just confirming, am I sure I want to import those records? I'm going to say yes. And now here it shows me just a summary of how many service lines I have for each category. So before this upload, I had 12 lead. But now after this upload, I will have 13 lead and 1 unknown. Now, if this was my last upload and I'm ready to submit to the state, I can click this Submit to State button and it'll jump me right over to that page. But you can always do Submit to State later in the menu. So I'm just going to click OK for now so we can go back to that Uploads page. Okay, so I'm back on the Uploads page, and now I can see that this upload now has a status of imported. So let's go ahead and review the statuses here just to make sure everyone's clear on them. When you first upload, the statuses are going to go from in queue to validating data to ready for review. So once the file is uploaded and processed by the software, it has a status of ready for review. And that's where you would be doing, you are going to correct any errors or just confirm that service line data is ready for import into the database. Once you click import, then it would have a status change to imported. At this point, the only actions you can do is view the service lines that were in that upload and imported in, and then again, of course, download that file. For these discarded ones, you aren't able to view anything. You've totally discarded that upload. So you can still get that original file, but that's all you can do with those. So that was in the case where you decided, you know, there's too many things wrong with this upload. I just want to clear it out and start over. So that's the discarded status. And then that last status here is going to be invalid file. So if you are doing an upload and you get this invalid file status, that means that the spreadsheet you're uploading is not an exact match to the template from the app. So if that was the case, make sure you download the template fresh, copy your data over into it, and then try uploading again. So invalid file has to do with the template itself. Okay, so if we go back to the inventory, we can see that we have 14 service lines in our inventory, and maybe I'm a small system, maybe that's all that I have. This is a living inventory, so it's meant to be something that you can continually add to. You can add to it in pieces, maybe neighborhoods at a time, whatever works best for you. You can make updates. But eventually you're going to have this inventory in a state that you feel ready to make your submission to the state. So whenever you're ready for that, you are going to click Submit to State over here in the menu. Okay, so this Submit to State, this isn't something you're going to do over and over again. This is something you're going to do before October 16th, and then on a recurring basis, whatever frequency is designated to you by the state of Texas. It might be once a year, it might be once every 3 years. But this update service lines is kind of your living, working space where you're always maintaining your inventory. And then this is just your final, you're ready to submit to the state. Okay, so once again, we have just kind of some instructions up at the top. And then we have the water system that was selected. When we are doing submit to state here, this is only going to, it's going to gather up all those service line updates since the last time an LSLI was submitted to the state. So if, for example, you had one service line and it's been updated multiple times in the past year, it's only going to be included once here with the latest data. There is that audit trail for all of the uploads and those changes and additions. But when you submit to the state, it's just going to have each service line with the latest information. So we have the page description, the instructions at the top. We have the water system selection, and then we have some water system information. This information actually comes from Texas's CIDWIZ database. That's their drinking water database. So if any of this information you needed to update, you would want to contact Texas, but this is pre-filled from their database. It has some information like, it has your lead and copper sampling frequency, population, and some pieces of information there. But then we move on down and we have this other web form. So this web form is at the water system level. So we previously were talking about for each specific service line, data for each of those. But this is data at the water system level. So here, all of those additional tabs in that Texas workbook, all the information you were gathering there, that is the information that you're going to be filling in here at this time when you're ready to submit to the state. So here we do have some fields with a star, so you'll want to make sure that you have those required fields filled in. I'll just try to put in some phony data real fast so that I can complete the submission. We have some fields that sometimes when you make a selection, an additional field might pop up. So you can describe those records, whatever information you have there. So let me just jump through these really fast just to show you the final process here. I don't know what kind of data we might be putting in there. Okay, so fill in as much information as you have from those other tabs in your workbook. And then when you are ready, you can move on to this is a place to review the service line records. So it's not necessarily going to show every single service line you have. It's just showing the ones that have changed. So, initially it's showing your entire inventory, but maybe next year you've only updated, 30 out of 100 service lines. So then it's just showing you those 30 with changes. And then it's providing that opportunity to look at that change report for each one. So that's the next section of this page. Then we have the summary. So this tells you how many service lines you have in total in your inventory, and then how many were updated since last time. Like I mentioned, if you had 100 service lines and only 30 were updated since you last submitted, you can see those numbers here. And you'll also be able to do a quick comparison of the old values for the service line lead category and then the new values. So hopefully over time you're seeing, the lead numbers going down or the unknowns going down. This just is a chance for you to see that quick overview summary of the service line categories. And then the next section is for acknowledgements. So you do need to make sure you read and check off each of these kind of certification statements and acknowledgements. And then once that's all filled in, then you will see the Submit to State button enabled. You will click Submit to State. Here you need to mark off that certification statement and put in your PIN. This is something that's required for CROMAIR, which is the electronic reporting rule. So you will go ahead and fill that in. If you forget your PIN, Matt will show you later where you can get to that in the portal. So then you click Certify and Submit. If you did need to jump to the portal, it's going to be up here by your name, Return to Portal. So we'll save that for later. But now I have done my official submission to the state. So let's say I want to check it out. I'm going to go over to history here. And the history here is where you can see all of the submittals that have been done and when and by whom. You can do a quick review to see the old category numbers and the new category numbers. You can see if the state has processed your LSLI submittal yet. You can see if so, who has processed it and when. So you may want to look at a little more detail, though, for the service line information that you submitted. And if that's the case, you can always click on the submittal ID here in the first column. And it's just going to take you right back to that page that you signed off on. It'll show you all the values that were filled in, and it will make it so that you can do kind of a more detailed review if you would like to for that submittal. I'm going to click back on my back browser there. So in addition to viewing that data, I mentioned the statuses. I do want to mention that if you have an LSLI submittal that is rejected by the state, you will get an email letting you know. So it will be sure to alert you if you have your LSLI submitted. There will be comments included in the email, and you can view those comments here in the history. So if I click on that little letter icon, it will see the rejection comments. In this case, they just said that there were 67 service lines, but only one was included in the LSLI that was submitted, so missing data. That's just one of the examples. So, but you will be notified if your LSLI is rejected. And then this last column here, I just want to mention, it's migration file. This is not really something for the water systems. It's more for the state. This is where they can download this LSLI information, put it into their state database, SIDWIZ, and then report it to for federal reporting. So that's not really something that you'll need to worry about, but hopefully these other fields you'll find useful as far as being able to tell a history of what was submitted and when. One thing to note too is you can actually filter down this list. You can sort it by date by just clicking on these fields here. You can change the sort. And then you can filter it down. So if you click on that funnel, I'm going to say it contains rocks and filter it. And now I only have these 4 records, or however many records, 6 records, I guess it is, displayed for Roxton. So those are some ways. The history has about a 2-year default, but you can change if you're looking for something from a specific time frame. You can change that as well. Okay, so that's the history. So remember, your menu goes from home down to history. I do want to go back to home and just go into a little more detail about some of these metrics, because now that you have added that LSLI data into the app and you've submitted it to the state, let's go ahead and look at these metrics and see how those can be useful to you at this phase. So we have this first metric here is about, it's showing you your unknowns. So here I see that we have identified the service line material for 84% of the service lines for all of my systems. If I click on that metric, I will see the data that is underlying that metric that is showing, that is being displayed. Whenever you click on those metrics and you see this grid, you have the option to export it. So again, you can put it in a spreadsheet. Maybe you want to know, okay, who has unknowns? How many do they have? You can see that in the different columns. So you can also export that to a spreadsheet so you can keep track of it or do additional analysis. And that's going to be true for all these metrics. So here we have that summary of service line categories. I can see which systems have how many of each of the categories. I can export that to a spreadsheet. And then I can also just kind of hover to get a percentage. So I see, okay, I've got 83% non-lead, you know, and kind of see what you're working with there. Service line replacements, this is going to show you how many need to be replaced, and I'm just kind of hovering over that, and then how many have been replaced. So once you start filling in those replacement dates and updating those materials, you can see that here. This would be live data based on the information that is in your inventory. You can always, again, click on the metric to see a table of the data and export it. And then you can see, you know, who has service lines needing replaced, and you can kind of focus your efforts. One thing I want to mention about these replacements is that we actually have another metric that we will be adding down the line. So we'll be adding a replacement rate metric. So once that part of the rule has been finalized, you'll be able to see how many service lines are expected to be replaced each year and your progress to see if you're on track to meet those, to stay in compliance with those requirements. So we'll have that coming. You'll be seeing that added at a later date. And then this last metric is for submit to state. So you can see how long it's been since you've officially submitted your LSLI to the state. So if you're supposed to submit it every 3 years, for example, then you can see how long it's been. And so if you're getting close to, maybe you need to be looking at doing another submittal. One last thing on this page, you can see I have it by default, it's showing all of my systems. If you just wanted to see this data for just one of your systems, you could do that same piece here where you start typing it in. Oops, I clicked on it, funny. And you can narrow it down. I'm going too fast, my bad. You can narrow down to one specific water system if you just want to find the information related to, you know, I just want to see the unknowns for this system. Okay, well, I'm doing pretty good. I got 93% here, or I only have 14 that need replaced for just this one system. So you can always narrow down your view to a single system if you don't want to see the across water system view. Okay, so that's all you need to know for this Submittals LSLI application. I will double check and just see if we have any questions in the chat that we would like to discuss.